Hi, Shadowtech Alchemy, Solutio podcast. What are the websites? Shadowtechalchemy.com, SolutioPodcast.com, melissamarimovie.com, melissamarimusic.com, and I am Colin Davis, and today is the March 10th, 2026 Solutio broadcast. And so that was what you just saw there. Me and Melissa, we had a band, our alchemical prog rock band called the 01 Experience. And that was our single, Let It Go. That's what that was. No, you know what? We made some music videos under another sub-brand called Deprogram Matrix. Couple other songs, couple other music videos, but that was the last thing we made with the 01 Experience. So that was 2019, and it's pretty darn amazing because the lyrics and the content that whole song was originally called "Letting Go of the Program," which is really what the great work is to a great degree about is about getting in touch with these inner parts of ourselves, these dissociated parts. And releasing them, relating to them, metabolizing them, and that song. In that song, what we had come to recognize was Melissa had come to recognize the influence of the archetype of Persephone in her life. And so we worked with that archetype. We worked with her a lot, and out there again, just kind of feeling through the whole process, and I came upon a cemetery that we had never come upon before. I had never gone past a certain point on this trail, and I found this very beautiful cemetery. And on the way out, I was drawn. There was a headstone for a family with the surname Joy. And I said, "Oh, Joy." And I looked over there, and right behind the Joy stone was this beautiful white statue of Persephone. And I didn't even realize at first that it was Persephone. And this is all talked about in the movie, melissamarimovie.com. But Melissa's spiritual name was Faith. And there was a stone at the foot of this Persephone statue with the words faith engraved in it. And I was, completely shocked, because I recognized that what had happened in a very sort of spiritual, metaphysical way is that synchronistic way is that I was being shown what was behind the whole situation, that Persephone was behind it all. And that the attempt to try to let go of Persephone, Melissa's attempt to let go of Persephone, to transcend Persephone, was actually not successful in the way that we wanted it to be. And this really, because Persephone is this, Persephone is the cycle of the seasons, and she represents the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. And Melissa's life was very cyclical in that way, in that she had a lot of underworld journeys. But she also had a lot of ecstasy. She had a lot of life. She had a lot of genius, a lot of brilliance, and a lot of experiences of pure joy and ecstasy. And she had both. She had both of the extremes. And so we had been saying, okay, maybe Persephone is always going to be involved in your life, but does she really have to be so extreme? Do the cycles have to be so extreme? And it's true that when we looked back at her life, we saw that the cycles had become more and more shallow. They weren't as extreme in her later life. And so we kind of thought it was kind of burning out, so to speak. But then she gets sick and dies, and it's like that's a big one. That's a big fat one. And the sickness itself was very It was very difficult 2 years. And she would say, yeah, this is the biggest trip to the underworld that I've made. It may or may not have been. She had some other big ones. But so this all happened, and so our intention, that video that you saw was an attempt to kind of create a ritual to try to move the Persephone pattern out of the psyche, or just let it go. It's literally, the song is called Let It Go, and to let go of this pattern, let go of this program. And but it would not let go. Persephone would not let go. And then after Melissa's death, Persephone shows up and says, "Here I am. I'm here. I'm behind it all." And so that was just so shocking that I really had to go into the whole thing and try to figure out what's going on here. What can you do and what can't you do with your individuation process? What's possible and what's not possible? And this kind of brings me to a conversation I had with Kelly a few days ago about her situation, because she's also on a kind of a Persephone journey. Also, she's this archetype, this feminine shadow archetype. Once you recognize it, a lot of women are taken by Persephone to some degree or another. And there's male versions of it too, of course. But this female one is the one that I had been studying so much because of Melissa. And now I know, quite a number of other women who are taken by this pattern, by this archetype. And some of them are aware of it and they're working on it, the alchemists. And Kelly Irene, as she goes by on Facebook, and she, she's been working with this complex for her whole life, and she has her cycles and everything. And we were talking about what to do about it, because what I was reminding her of is that she was it's so easy when you have symptoms, when you have physical symptoms, it's so easy to let doctors or the culture give you a name for those symptoms, and then you identify with that name, with that illness, with that syndrome, whatever it is, and then it's, I have this, I have this, it has me, basically. And then it integrates itself into your personality and into your persona. And now you have this syndrome, you have this disease, you have this genetic illness, whatever it is. And it's so easy to do that. But the alchemical way of approaching it is where you don't concretize the symptom into you don't name it. You don't name it like that. You don't give it an identity like that. Not an identity that the present culture wants to give it. You go looking for its cultural, or its mythological, psychological, psychospiritual, ancient identity. Like, for example, Persephone, is, you can't really fully identify with her very easily because she's a Greek goddess. She's from another culture and another time. So there's always a kind of sense of separation. And but if someone says, ABC syndrome that you have, that's, and then everyone else is talking about it in your culture, it's so much easier to identify with it. So you don't, you want to have that separation. But what we were talking about, what I was saying to her is that instead of concretizing it into a syndrome and giving it a name, yes, go back and find its archetypal image, right? But then try to discern for yourself in your own subjective way the symbolic meaning of the symptom. A symptom is a symbol. Let the symptom be a symbol. And what do you do with the symbol? If you know from Carl Jung, from Jungian psychology, that a symbol is a multi-dimensional image. There's signs and there's symbols. A sign is like a stop sign, a red light, a green light, any kind of a message that gives you information about what you need to do, bathroom sign, whatever, wheelchair access. Those aren't symbols, those are signs. A symbol is something that is multidimensional and very deep, and it has different layers, and you can keep going into it and turning it around, and you can just continue to get more and more realizations off of it. It will keep metaphorically giving you information if you stay with it. It's a symbol. It goes down into the collective unconscious. And so it goes through all generations in all times, all the way back to the origins of consciousness. So that's what a symbol will do. And when you recognize that your symptoms are symbols, they're speaking, they're giving you information, multi-layers of information for you about where they came from, what they stand for, how you're supposed to interpret them. They're giving you information about their past, their present, their future, your past, your present, your future. They're giving you all this context, is what I'm trying to say. They're giving you an incredible amount of context if you will go looking for it and mine it for meaning. Now, you can't always discover all that meaningful context just by studying the symptom as a symbol, because you have blind spots, right? You naturally have blind spots. So this is why it's good to get with other people who have symbolic literacy, who can analyze the symptom as a symbol and help you pull it apart, right? That's what you're supposed to do in Jungian analysis, right? And unfortunately, that's not a cultural asset that we really have so much anymore. The Jungians are, getting old, and we don't really have a robust new Jungian culture in our civilization at this point, or it hasn't transformed itself to the next, because it may not, Jung may just be one rung in the ladder. And so we're kind of in the process of developing what the next kind of cultural medicine is going to be on that comes out of that alchemical tradition. But so this is very esoteric now, and you have to go do this work for yourself and try to find other people. There are other people. I'm here, and there's others of us. We're around. We're just not really out there that much, because the culture rejects this whole way of seeing and being, for the most part. As the culture crashes more and more, people will come back to this. They'll find this more. That's happening. That will continue to happen. But so, yeah, that's what we were talking about how to recognize her symptom as a symbol. And so we can use, for example, me and Melissa's living in the movie idea. The idea that life is a movie, and that there is a script running. There's a screenplay running. There's a script running, and we always thought to ourselves, well, how can we get involved in the script writing process? How can we get involved in the movie making process of our lives? How can we become co-directors of the movie of life? And then going back to kind of the whole lesson of Melissa's passing, another one of the lessons was that you may not be able to actually co-direct as much as you can improvise, right? You can improvise in the movie of life. You're given that much free will. That you have that much free will to improvise. You know, it's like, for example, in jazz and blues, but mainly in jazz, you have a theme, you have a motif, and then you play on that motif. And so you can have all kinds of different versions of a jazz standard that will, you know, especially if they're instrumentals and they don't have lyrics to them, and you can just kind of riff in and around those themes. And so I kind of now, looking back at the whole thing, is I'm looking at it like, okay, and there's this Alan Watts quote that I often bring up about how he says, you thought life was a game and you were supposed to win the game, but really it was a play and you were supposed to sing and dance. So, you know, you're supposed to improvise. You can improvise in your movie of life. And then you have to kind of go with the flow. And so if you are given these archetypal patterns, if Persephone is involved in your life, she's going to be there. And she's going to do her thing. But what you can do is you can improvise with what you're given. That ingredient is going to be in your life. But now some people who are, let's say, channeling that archetype, because there's so many archetypes, but let's say there's people channeling that particular one we're talking about today. Persephone takes you down into the underworld, right? So she takes you down into depression, she takes you into loss, she takes you into grief, she takes you into shadow states. And one of the ways in which when people don't consciously work with these archetypes is that she can hold you down there and you won't get your fair share of springtime, of ecstasy, of joy, of life, which is part of her program too. She's a 50-50 program, and she's a duality program. And so you can get so addicted to the underworld, physiologically, chemically, psychologically addicted to the underworld, that you never really can have your springtime. Can't fully have it. Or if it is your destiny to really have to experience her path in a very, to a very heavy degree, you can convert, if you wake up to the situation, you can convert the suffering into incredibly meaningful shamanic, alchemical experience as you mine the experience for meaning. You can be an actor of a play, and you can just, let's say whatever your role is, imagine like a Shakespearean play or something like that, and you can learn the role and you can play it really flat and really weak and just whatever, be a whatever, or you can really craft it and hone it, and you can master that character. You can become that character, and you can turn that you can make real, what we would call life art out of it. So you can do that when you're taken by these archetypes, by these patterns, by these complexes. When they have you, you can say, okay, you may have me, but now I'm going to make an incredibly deep piece of life art out of what I'm being given. So even in the case where you can't transform the illness or the symptom, because a lot of times you can, but even if you couldn't, you would be living with the suffering, but you would be having an incredibly meaningful, deep experience of life. Artistic, symbolic life. And that's a lot better. That's 1,000 or 1,000,000 times better than having a cynical, depressed, pessimistic, flat, unspiritual experience of suffering. You don't want that. If you're going to have to suffer, make it as deep and colorful and alchemical and beautiful and artistic as you can. Of course, that's what you're going to do. But you have to wake up to that, and you have to have a taste of what that mindset is like, right? And so when people go into religion, they're getting that. When people are suffering and they go into a religion, they're experiencing, they're getting in touch with the rituals, with the icons, the idols that go back, that will summon these states of consciousness, these psychospiritual transcendent states of consciousness. And so this is what people do when they're having intense suffering, cyclical suffering. They traditionally fall to religion. But that doesn't work for everybody, because that is like a pre-made package that is in some ways very, very potent, very powerful, and it works for a lot of people. But a lot of people are too individualistic, and because of the time that we're in, and we've just had this whole, the whole age of materialism, and the modern and postmodern mind doesn't really always interface so much with that kind of operating system. Just the traditional Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, whatever operating system that you've had available to you for all these centuries. It doesn't quite click for everybody. That operating system doesn't install properly in everybody's mind-body system. So this is where people, go and put together their own psychospiritual operating system. Or this is what Carl Jung did. He's one person that did this very, very successfully, and then documented everything and said, here you go, here's what I came up with. This is my toolkit. And this is my operating system. And it might work for you too. And so it was a 20th century alchemical, hermetic, semi-Christian, Gnostic, let's say maybe, in small g Gnostic operating system. And for me, it's a perfect fit. Now I add some updates to it. I got to update the operating system. But yeah, so it gives me what a traditional religion would give people, but it has so much more functionality than a traditional religion. Because you can take a traditional religion, you can plug it into the Jungian system, and you can be like, oh, and then that religion becomes a module, but that module doesn't supersede the whole the whole code, the whole script. It's just sitting in there for reference. So you can take your Christian or your Buddhist or your Hindu or whatever modules and you can plug them in. And then the Jungian framework will be kind of like a meta script that sits on top and gives you like a meta view, an integral view, really, kind of, you could say. And so that's what I'm doing, and that's what I was doing with Kelly the other day, and we were kind of putting her symptoms and her situation through this operating system and going, what can we get out on the other side? What can we come to using these perspectives, these symbolic perspectives? So so anyway, I got my list of stuff to talk about. And anybody that is coming in here late, you can go replay the program, and I played the Let It Go video by me and Melissa's band, the O1 Experience, and you should check that out. And so what else was I going to talk about? I was going to talk about a conversation I also had with Lisa and the analysis of shadow projections. But to lead up to that, we have this, I talked about this last week, and I'm not going to go on about politics, really. That's not really what this program is about. We're getting above that level. But the whole, Iran war and the Israel, or let's say Jews versus Arabs conflict that's just going on and on and on and on for like how many hundreds or thousands of years. And oh man, it's like getting so tiring. And you listen to the people on both sides of this, and just blah blah blah. They're just their ideology, and they're just ideological possession, we would call it. And nobody can get out of the program. They can't get out of the field of conflict, right? The pain body field. And so they're just in reactive world. This reaction. You did this to me, so I do this to you. You did this to me, so I do this. It just goes on forever. It's just, and then it keeps you in a lower state of consciousness. And then you can't evolve to a higher state of consciousness. So what you do is, when you're in this kind of lower state of, shadow warrior consciousness, then you develop your shadow warrior skills. So you become really good at this Machiavellianism and this psychopathic types of strategies. And that's what they do over there in the Middle East. And they become very good at these psychopathic Machiavellian strategies. And so they can be technically good at those kinds of things, but it just keeps the low consciousness reactivity going. And they're just stuck. And they just periodically keep dragging us all into it constantly. And I'm not taking any sides with the whole thing. I'm just looking at it, from above and going, okay, you guys are really stuck. And then they wound each other through these conflicts. And then those wounded people have a more difficult time getting their consciousness above them, or getting above their program and getting above their reactivity. And so it's like, oh man, it's just so weak, it's so stupid, so pathetic once you're above it. And so, but this same dynamic happens in your relationships. When you have a chronic conflict cycle in a relationship, call it a relational pain body. When you have one of those things going, it's the same thing. It's just this tit for tat, victim, aggressor, blah, 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 back and forth, back and forth. So you got to get above the program, and you have to go, okay, let's not talk at the level or think at the level my fault versus your fault, what you did versus what. First, you have to get to the point to where you have to say, I would rather not have this going on anymore. I would rather evolve through this than have to hold on to my beliefs, my thoughts, my grievances that I currently have. I will let go of my grievances just to get out of this. I want to get out of this. I want this to end. This is getting too tiring. I want it to end. You have to get to that point, and many people will not. They will not. It will just, these kinds of patterns just burn out over generations. And just burns out over generations, but the pain body just keeps on going if nobody comes in with a higher view and problem solves the situation and injects into the culture mind an antidote. If there's no antidote available, it will just blah, 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 just keep on going for generations. Now we have antidotes. We have enough perspectives, practices, what you would call an integral theory second tier. We have enough second tier awareness now. It's still just a tiny fraction of the public can actually go there, but it's out there. It is like, a little bit out there. And so the more of us that pick up this second tier thinking and start using it in our own lives, and then explaining to other people how this works. Like Eckhart Tolle, for example, he'll tell you about the pain body and how it works. Or Paul Levy writes about Wetiko. And if you will read these people, if you will listen to them and understand this framework, you'll go, oh, okay, right, and you'll get it. And then you have to start implementing it in your own life. But behind these conflicts are a lot of repressed shadow material, right? So there's all this grief and rage and revenge and all this kind of shadow material that's underneath these conflicts. And that material has to be metabolized by the public or by the individuals who are involved in the conflict. It has to be metabolized. It has to be brought out of the shadow into consciousness where it can be seen and metabolized. And that's how it works. When you see shadow material, when things are brought out of the unconscious and then they're seen, and like I was talking about earlier, when you're analyzing symptoms symbolically, using symbolic literacy to analyze symptoms, and you're turning it around, you're going, oh, okay, I see, and you're getting meaning out of it. You do that with your shadow material. And so, for example, if the Israel-Palestine or Jew-Arab conflict, or now it's Israel-Iran, whatever version of this, if they had mediators, if they had people, if we as a people had people who were able to analyze at this level and then go into the conversation and continue to just bring the conversation up to this level. Like you hear people talking about grievances and you did this to me, no, you did this to me and stuff. And then somebody comes in and starts saying, okay, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? How does this feel? What does this feel? And you start basically challenging people to start to analyze and work with the shadow content, then if that was coming from a position of leadership, of influence, then that would be like the adult in the room has come in and telling the kids to get it together. But right now we don't have any adults in the room at all. There are no adults in the room. So we only have teenagers at best, is what we have. So, but that's where we are. But, down at our level, we can do stuff where we have our own little mini Israel-Palestines in our own lives. So we can get to understand our shadow material, our pain bodies, our shadow complexes, and we can start talking about them with each other. The relationship, the intimate relationship or close friendship, is the best container to do this in. You can do your own shadow work on your own. You can do your own shadow journaling. You can do your own self-awareness practices, right? You can analyze all your judgments and your projections. You can trace them down to old memories and old content. You can emotionally process that stuff, sitting in it, feeling it. So you can do a lot of that on your own, but you can't do all the work alone because some of your complexes, your programs, are relational programs. A great deal of them all are relational programs. And so you have to get around other people, and not all other people will trigger all your complexes. But usually your intimate partners, the people who you get very close to, these people have, not only are you similar in your ego's constructs, but your shadow constructs, your pain body profile, let's say, is similar between people. And so those relationships cause reactivity. And then you have the opportunity to work with the reactivity, to work with the complexes in the container of the relationship. Now you have two people analyzing the conflicts. What just happened? Why did that happen? What triggered you? What triggered me? What triggered you? What emotions came up? What's still back there? Processing that stuff together and linking it back to past cycles and starting to see the continuity of the pain body cycles. Naming the parts that are activated, giving them personal names and going, oh, okay, yeah, this part that keeps on coming up, mad girl, whatever part you want to call her or him, is coming up again, and why is she mad, and when did she, why did she go on that path? How did she become mad girl? What's her history? What's mad girl's history? Where did she come from? Oh, well, my mom, this, that, and you go into it and you go back to it and you dialogue that out with your partner. And you develop an intense level of trust and intimacy in your relationship when you can go tracing down, going down, rooting down into your pain body, into your complexes, into your shadow parts. And it's the greatest way to have actual real intimacy in a relationship. Most people, because they put a wall up, not only in their individual lives, but in their relational lives, around their pain, their trauma, their shadow, they put a wall up there and then they don't go embrace it together and they tiptoe around it. They don't really have very intimate relationships. They don't really have they're not living the potential. They're not getting to the potential of depth of that relationship. They're not experiencing real intimacy. They don't know it. They don't know it. It's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate that most people in relationship are having half of what's possible, because they're tiptoeing around this pool of shadow material. And so when you do this relational shadow work, you not only do you loosen up all the reactivity, and not only do you gain awareness of what's going on, and the more aware you get, then you get more and more separation. The witness, or the watcher, you could call it, of your consciousness gets more and more separated from your unconscious reactivity. And then you can stop the conflicts while they're going on, or even before, or after quite a while, you can learn to stop the conflicts before they even get started. And so you'll feel the energy in the room with your partner, and you'll be like, uh-oh, something's going on. Melissa and I, we used to do this. I feel something's in the air. Something's happening. Something's up. Some shadow part is up. And the other one will say, yeah, I felt that too. As soon as you woke up, I felt that in you. And you're like, well, I felt that in you. As soon as you got back from the store, oh yeah, I felt that. Right when you walked in the door. Yeah, oh, okay, wow. And then you scan for what's back there. Right, okay, I think it's this, or I think it's that. And you talk about it and you bring it out. And then if the complex still wants to play, and it gets its way and it gets you triggered, maybe it can't trigger you right then and there, but maybe that evening or the next day it triggers you. Then you're like, oh, okay, here it goes. Here it is. Remember, we were talking about it yesterday? Here it is. The pain body wants to play. Or whatever model. You hear me, I switch back and forth between models, maps, because they're all kind of give you a different kind of topological view of what's going on in the unconscious. And then because you have that awareness and you have that transparency of communication, the thing can't really ever get you that bad. And then when you do get sucked into these fights, then you can talk about it afterwards. Everybody can dig into it and pull out what was there. And then you can just clean all the resentment or anger or confusion or whatever is back there. So you walk away from the conflict completely clean. You don't like the fact that the conflict happened. You're like, oh man, we had another fight, blah, blah, blah. But you walk away from it knowing we worked through it and we are maturing through the process. And we're learning about ourselves and our inner nature. And so that's like what I was saying earlier about analyzing your symptoms. But now I'm talking about it in the context of relationship, analyzing your conflict cycle. And so how much better is it? Instead of having a conflict cycle where it just erupts and then everybody just blows up at each other and then kind of tiptoes around and stuff until it finally kind of heals itself back up a little bit, and then you can go back to business again, but you never really resolve anything. How's that? That's an addiction. That's a demon that has you. How's that compared to analyzing it, pulling up the roots, figuring out where it goes back to, getting involved in naming and making meaning out of it and understanding yourself better and feeling intimacy and compassion for the other person, and then walking away from the conflict more awake, more aware, more knowledgeable about what you're made of and how you work. Isn't that 1,000 times better than just unconsciously turning the cycle? Of course it is. And that's available. It's not available to everybody, though, unfortunately. Not everybody is developmentally capable. They don't have the actual psychophysiological capacity to go to this level. But a lot of people do. Millions of people do. And if the portion of people who can come to this level of consciousness, if they will do it and they will learn the tools and they will start bringing these kinds of practices into their lives and start being able to speak about it and teach it and share it with other people, that puts that it's like I was saying, the adult in the room, that now makes them the adults in the room. And now everybody else kind of looks at that and says, oh, okay, that's the standard for where we need to go now. Right? Just like how the Americans think of themselves, a lot of them think of themselves as America as this, shining city on the hill or whatever, this Camelot or something. And for a while, that mythology worked. It was coherent because there was a true advancement of psychosocial consciousness that came online during the founding of America. And then other nations would look to America and say, wow, look at their system of government, look at their morality, look at their ability to organize themselves around principles and not fight with themselves internally, and they can create a great nation. Look at that. Wow. We were looked up to. And so that now we aren't, because we've fallen down. We've let all this shadow material take us over. And so now it has to be a smaller group of people, a remnant of people, a splinter group of people who say, okay, right, we're going to the next level above that now. Right? In integral theory, it's the modern stage, is the America stage. And then we went into the postmodern stage, the green stage. And what I'm talking about doing is going to the second tier stage. It's teal in integral theory, or yellow in spiral dynamics. Second tier, meta theory, problem solver, holistic, integral mindset. So that is available to a lot of people, but we need more of us to start talking this way, sharing these techniques, and then practicing them ourselves. And that's what I'm doing with this program, man. That's what this is all about. That's why I'm doing this. And I'm just talking to a handful of people right now who can understand this and who can be initiated into this way of working, and then can do something with it. And so I don't know what else to do, but just do this, and then let nature do what she wants to with it. And if there are some people out there that are like, great, we're doing this too, we can start having greater conversations, and then more people can get involved. And we're not the only ones. There's people all over the place that are doing this in their own little way. We just don't know about each other. That's why I've talked about this as a new strain of the human potential movement. When you look at the Jungians, or let's say the integral theory people, these are second tier people. This is this advanced consciousness, and but the integral people who came after the Jungians, they didn't go into the Jungian world. They didn't go into the right brain world as much, and the mythic mindset and the symbolic mindset. They were more in this kind of left brain kind of analysis type thing. And this requires both left brain and right brain. This is a whole brain thing, whole mind body thing. This is a psycho-spiritual practice and lifestyle and mindset. It's not just an intellectual subject that we study and talk about. And just, that's what the integral people were kind of doing. They were just looking at it intellectually and saying, okay, when's our utopia going to come? We've figured it out now. We've figured out what these new states of consciousness are. We can think this way, but can you be this way? And can you integrate all the shadow material that's getting in the way of you ascending to the next level of the spiral? So anyway, let's see I see Theo. Hi, Theo. Oh, well, I'm helping initiate you. Well, that's great. That's what I'm trying to do, man. You've been listening to Robert Moore lately. That's so great. Yes. There's Robert Moore lectures have been uploaded to YouTube now. There's so many of them up there. And I'm trying to think of the one YouTube channel that has, I think the YouTube channel is called a neo-Jungian mapping of the psyche or something like that. If you just search on Robert L. Moore on YouTube, you'll find a lot of material. Now, I also have some folders, some uploaded libraries that I've posted the links to them, and anybody that wants those, I just ask me. I'll keep reposting them. But you can just find so much of that on YouTube yourself. And start listening to Robert Moore, reading Robert Moore's books. It's especially for, even though I think women should read Robert Moore, at least listen. Women should listen to Robert Moore. Men should read Robert Moore's book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And then there's 4 individual books, one for each of the 4 archetypes, that if you want to go even deeper, you can buy those too. And those are aimed at men. And you may remember last week, or was it the week before, I think it was last week, I did that reading of excerpts of that paper by Sheila Foster, the Archetypes of the Sacred Feminine, which is kind of like a female version of Robert Moore's four archetypes, because they both come from Toni Wolff, who was one of Jung's partners, and she's the one that came up with the original 4-quadrant, or not 4-quadrant, but 4-archetype map. And neo-Jungian structural psychology channel on YouTube. And so what was I saying? So anyway, so that's really good. So, but see, because Robert Moore is not just a male psychologist. He never tried to do that. It's just that there was this, what they call the mythopoetic men's movement that emerged in the 80s and 90s. And there was these men's groups. I think Robert Bly, the poet, was putting on some of these, and there were others. And these, and they were organized by Jungians. And so there was men getting together in these retreats and learning Jungian psychology and applying it in their lives. That was very good and very productive, but that kind of peaked, and it's still out there. But Robert Moore saw that, and he got pulled into that, and he started, writing some books and doing lectures for men. But in general, his work is for everybody. And he's not just a Jungian, he's a Freudian, he's an Adlerian, he's a Kohutian, he's like all these different kinds of, he uses all these different theories and systems, and he's just so tremendous. If you want to get into Jungian psychology, just dive into Robert Moore. And it's great because he won't pigeonhole you into the Jungian system. He'll give you that as the core, but then he'll give you other stuff. And, attachment theory and object relations theory and all kinds of other stuff. He'll put that in there too. So you can just listen to Robert Moore and take notes and, just look up the stuff that doesn't make sense to you. Use ChatGPT, and, it's free. Sign up for a free ChatGPT account, and then just take sentences or ideas that come from Robert Moore lectures and put them into ChatGPT and ask it to explain to you, what does this mean? I got this from a Robert Moore lecture, and what does this mean? Explain this to me better. And it will. Use ChatGPT or whatever AI program you want as your, as an assistant, right? So there's no excuse. And you can do this with any material or any Jungian material. I was going to show you a book. I've shown this before, but here's a good book for anybody that wants to get into Jungian psychology. It's called Practical Jung by Harry Wilmer. And it's still available. It's from the 80s. And it's still available on Amazon. It's like $20. It's affordable. And it takes you through... and he's an artist, and he draws. Let's see if I can get this to, no, the exposure is not going to make it, you're not going to be able to see it. But it's got all these nice illustrations in it, or there you can kind of see some stuff. It's got all these great illustrations. Look, there's an illustration of the dynamic of the shadow and how shadow projection works. And it's made for people who are wanting to become therapists, but it's written in pretty much lay language, and so you can use this as your basic textbook on Jungian psychology. You can always come back to this as a reference, and I've always told people, get Robert Johnson books, Robert A. Johnson, because they're very simple and easy to read. And if you take his whole bibliography, that's like a whole degree in Jungian psychology, and they're very easy to read. They're like 100, 120 pages each. And then you can listen to Robert Moore, and boom, and you just, man, do it. Learn Jungian psychology for yourself. Learn it. You'll use it on yourself, and then, especially with Robert Moore, you'll find others, and they'll bridge it into other forms of psychology. You'll get a whole education on this without ever having to go to school. And James Hillman, all these guys, you get a great education, and you'll use it on yourself. You use it on your family. It'll become part of your mindset. It's just amazing. This is especially for people who are spiritual people who are I kind of like how I talked about earlier. Not everybody can just adopt a religion just out of the box and say, boom, this is my spiritual operating system. For the people who can't do that, who have to put together their own spirituality, those kind of people are the kind of people that can use Jungian psychology. Artists can use Jungian psychology. Artists, philosophers, esoteric type people, mystics, people who are on the shamanic path, all those kind of people, all those kind of people naturally will fall into Jungian psychology. And it's really, it's not just a male-dominated thing either. There's a lot of women. There's a lot of women Jungians. It's so great. There's so many women Jungians, and the whole, the whole science itself, it's not even just a science, the whole alchemical methodology is about balance. It's about balancing the masculine and the feminine. And so it's very balanced in general. So what you guys are saying. Okay, my glasses are all smudged up. Man, my vision, I never had good vision. I have like some different eye conditions since being a child. I'm wearing contacts right now, and I'm putting on reading glasses in order to read these little texts, and so, oh, Sherry. Hi, Sherry. Yeah, well, thanks for hanging out, and thanks for all your, thanks for taking the time to put all those little emojis on there. That's very nice. That's very artistic. Made a little painting there. Theo says that he's absolutely, Robert Moore is brilliant, and he's up there with the greatest speaker. Oh man, as a speaker, as a lecturer, Robert Moore is one of the greatest speakers, lecturers of all time. People like Jordan Peterson. Robert Moore blows away Jordan Peterson. I hate to say that. I like Jordan Peterson more or less. I mean, I found Jordan Peterson a long time ago, especially in his early days before he got popular. I liked him. Since then he's Jordan's got, his like anybody, he's got his stuff, and Robert Moore had his stuff. We all got our stuff, but Robert Moore is, yeah, man, I don't know. He's He's just the best. He's just the best, man. People like Alan Watts, Joseph Campbell, these are well-known speakers, philosophers who are just, top of their game. And Robert L. Moore is one of those people, but he's very much on the psychological side. Oh, James Hillman is a really, really great speaker and really great presenter. He does more, he's a little more academic about it, more reading, more like pre-written reading. He's a writer. But he's got a cool personality, and he jokes around, and at first I didn't like him as much years ago, but then I kind of refound him, and I like him a lot now. James Hillman's great. He's a great speaker. He's very charismatic. But Robert Moore is just a badass. He's just a badass. Theo says, everyone needs the knowledge of the objective psyche and the four quadrants. It's a science indeed, yeah. So now the four quadrants is not in Jungian theory, that's in integral theory. But Jungian theory has the four archetypes, it has the quaternity, it has the mandala, it has the quaternity it's called. Jung was always looking for these master formulae that would be laid out in fours. He thought that the Trinity wasn't right. It needed the fourth. It needed Mary in there. So the objective psyche is the collective unconscious. People have heard that term, the collective unconscious. And so that's basically, I call it the culture mind. You have your individual mind, everything that's in your conscious ego and your unconscious. And then together, through the relational field, we have the collective mind that we call culture. In integral theory, in the four quadrants, that's the lower left-hand quadrant. It's culture. There's actually two layers of it. There's more, but just the basic two layers of it. You got the outer layer and the inner layer. So the outer layer of the culture quadrant is just information. It's all our art, and it's all of our math, and it's all our law and our philosophy and our media and all that. And then the inner side of the lower left quadrant is our actual felt attitudes, values, and relational feelings about reality and about our shared reality that we hold as psychological content. So, but yeah. So the what did he say? I was commenting on what he said. The collective unconscious. The collective unconscious is this internal shared relational field of culture, and then it gets reiterated generation after generation and evolved generation after generation, and it epigenetically influences our DNA, and so the next generation is more predisposed to be able to reiterate that culture. And so it's not just a lower left-hand quadrant and upper left-hand quadrant mind culture, but it's a body, upper right-hand quadrant, and society or system level as well. And that's the collective unconscious. It's going through everything. And Jung's idea was that there's innate patterns in the collective unconscious that he calls archetypes. And these archetypes, these meta patterns, these master patterns, are constantly reiterating themselves and representing themselves. These are the Greek gods and all of the different personifications, anthropomorphizations and personifications that exist in myth and in quote unquote culture. But, okay, where are we with our stuff? So now you guys are doing great with the comments in there. If anybody wanted to call in to the show, we can do that. Just put a text on there saying you want to do that. Or if you already know the phone number, the phone number's in the description to the YouTube show. And it's also at solutioalchemy.com. The WhatsApp number or the US-based phone number, they're both on there. If anybody who hasn't called in yet wants to call in, just I want you to call in. I want you to do it. You don't have to. I know a lot of people are not, I push you to do it, and I want you to, but you don't have to if you don't want to. You can just use the chat. But yeah, whatever you want to put in there, however you want to communicate, I'm here for you guys. I'm giving you some background, I'm giving you some monologue or whatever to orient you towards this alchemical way of living and being and doing shadow work and all of this and Jungian psychology. I'm orienting you in that direction, orienting your mind in that direction. But also I want to give you specific feedback as to for your particular challenges. That's the best thing to do here, is to apply this mindset, this curriculum to your specific things in life, challenges in life. And that's where you'll get to hear us use this mindset, this system, this curriculum in real time. So whatever you've got, throw it at me, and we'll put it through we'll throw our tools at it. Now, while I'm waiting to do that, and while you're thinking about whether you want to do that or not, I have, I wanted to bring up about me and Lisa, my new friend Lisa. We had a great conversation yesterday, and Lisa from Canada, and we were, this is a good one. We've talked about so many things, but we were talking about, she was telling me about some of her favorite kind of alternative health gurus. And I was being reactive to one or two of them. And, oh yeah, I saw him before. Yeah, whatever. I think he's kind of a scammer, blah, 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 what I was saying. And she's like, no, you just haven't looked at him. He's not like that at all, blah, blah, blah. And she's just very, liked this, the one guy I'm thinking of. I don't need to mention his name. It doesn't matter. But one of these new alternative health rock star guys. And so I was getting triggered, right? I was getting triggered over the whole thing. And then she noticed it. I noticed it. And after, a little while, I'm like, okay. So obviously I'm getting triggered over this guy. So let's go into this. And Lisa got to hear me, basically take responsibility for my own projections in real time in the middle of a conversation, and analyze the whole thing. And we used it as an opportunity to go into my unconscious and go, well, what is it about this guy that I don't like, that is an actual representation of something in me, that's in my shadow, that's dissociated from my own ego? What am I disowning or rejecting in myself that I'm then projecting onto him as a way to offload it out of myself? That's how projection works. And so I had to say, what was it? Okay, so is it that I'm jealous of this guy? Am I jealous of him? Do I, or am I envious that he's able to contact his inner gold and become successful by way of that, because he's able to be confident? I would look at his stuff and I would look at him and say, there's nothing he doesn't got, I can do the same thing he can do. I could say that. And it's actually kind of true, but I'm not. Why? If I can do the same thing he's doing, why am I not doing it? Well, maybe because I kind of feel his business model is too much about marketing, and that turns me off, and I just don't feel comfortable. I kind of, think marketing is kind of parasitic, and I don't, okay, well, maybe there's a truth to that, but maybe that's also an excuse, right? And then what else? What is it? What about what kind of fear of success could be in my own shadow? What happens if you get successful? Oh, well, you could get attacked a lot. You could have a lot of eyeballs on you, and then you're subject to scrutiny, and then you have to deal with all that negative energy. You also have to assimilate your own greatness. You have to assimilate your own golden shadow. And maybe there's a part of you that's afraid to do that because it might make you grandiose. Maybe you've tried that before. Maybe you've been narcissistic before. Maybe I've been narcissistic before, and it didn't work out for me. It blew me up. Maybe I don't want that to happen again. Or maybe I just don't have patterns, images from my own family line that give me an example of what healthy success could look like. Maybe there's just a general dissociation there, in regards to not having. Maybe there's just a let's just say it's a deficit of positive, healthy models of what success is without becoming a narcissist and without becoming a parasite. Right? And so I started going into, some of the stuff I'm saying right now I didn't even go into yesterday. I'm getting more out of it today. But so we started going into this and analyzing me in this conversation. This is the first time I talked to Lisa. So that's a good, so this, you can do this now. Now think about that. What does that do for the relationship? What does that do for the relationship when you are in a conversation with somebody and you touch on something that triggers you? We all know the experience of touching on something that triggers the other person. And then we have to kind of put it away and move through that part of the conversation, and then just kind of move through it. But no one takes responsibility for it. No one picks it up and does anything with it. So what does that do for the maturity and the intimacy of the relationship when you take responsibility, when you notice that you're triggered and that you're projecting either onto them or onto someone else in the context of the relationship or in the context of the conversation? And then you say, oh, wait a minute, I'm triggered, I'm projecting. Whoa, okay, hey, stop. Let's stop here. And the other person says, yeah, you are triggered, yeah. And you say, okay, well, let's figure this out. Let's figure out why I'm triggered. And the person who's triggered takes responsibility for their own projections. And then you go mine it, you go pull it up, you figure it out as good as you can, spend 10 minutes on it or whatever, and then be like, okay, and move on. You've just given an example to the other person. You've shown the other person what can be done and how to take responsibility for your own junk in real time. You've shown the other person that you can be at a certain level of maturity. And then that other person now has, the example and the opportunity to do it when it's their turn. And even if you have to help them do it, they've seen what it looks like, and it's not so bad, isn't it? It's not so bad. How bad was that? Dissecting my own projections and figuring it out and going, okay, yeah, I'm projecting. I'm human. I got that stuff just like you do. And so, and when you're projecting onto someone else, like if you're having a conversation with somebody and you notice that the projection is about someone else that's outside, that's not there in the room, it's actually easier to work with it. because there's less charge, because the other, it's when you're projecting onto the person that's right in front of you, it's a little bit more difficult, but you can do it too. So that's what we do. That's like a good example of how we work through our projections in real time, and we, step up our responsibility. But you have to have some basic tools first. You have to have the ability to see these things. You have to have been practicing. And so, I also wanted to tell you guys about, in order to get more familiar with different types of shadow material. First, in a minute, I'm going to take you through my new 4-quadrant integral shadow mapping system, or whatever I'm going to end up calling it, that I'm working on right now. And I'm going to scroll through it, and I'm going to show you some stuff in there. I'm going to read you some questions that are in there. But before I go there, I'm going to show you a book by Robert Augustus Masters. That's a very, that name is, okay, let me find it here. Kindle, it's on my Kindle. Where's Kindle? There we go. Yeah, so this book is called Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark. Okay, let's see. Let's go to the cover. See, I'll show you what it looks like. Title. Yeah. So this book here. Let's see if we can get that in there. It's not the most creative cover, but Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark by Robert Augustus Masters. And this guy's a master. He's not an orator like Robert Moore. He's a good speaker, but it's not really his thing as much. But this guy's another. He's not exactly a Jungian, totally. He's kind of doing his own thing, but he's got that in there, and this book is really cool. It's written in lay language, and I'm going to read you the table of contents. So what he basically does is he lists all of this common shadow material and gives you a chapter where he goes into each of these states of consciousness, each of these emotions or drives, and talks about it and pulls it apart, so you get a real feeling for how to pull apart these shadow states. So I highly recommend this. I didn't mention it earlier in the show, but this is another one to add to your list. And you ran out of room. Oh, when you were making that art. Okay, we'll talk about that in a sec. So, yeah, Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark, Robert Augustus Masters. Table of contents: an inside look at our shadow, our conditioning, our view of destiny, our fear, our sense of danger, our anger, our shame, our grief, narcissism, addiction, our sexuality, our spirituality, our fear of death, our resistance, our honesty, choice, evil, bigness and beauty in the shadow in shadow work in practice, strengthening the foundation for shadow work, an inside look at inner child work, dethroning our inner critic, self-sabotage uncovered, and dreams private shadow theater. Then that's just the first two parts. Then there's becoming more intimate with our pain, turning towards our pain, naming and entering our pain, exploring the qualities of pain, emerging from our pain, generational trauma and collective PTSD in our shadow, collective shadow unveiled, darkness unveiled. Yeah, listen to that. And it's good. Man, he's good. He's really good. I like him a lot. He's really good. I've had this book for a couple of years, and I've kind of just gone into it. I've felt like kind of just used it as a reference. But he's really good. And he speaks in regular language, but it's super deep. And so definitely, Robert Augustus Masters, Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark, get that book. Get that book, because that will get you into this in a way that's not as technical. I'm very technical and like theory oriented and maps and stuff like that. Robert Moore's a mix between the kind of the deep experiential and the technical. A little more on the technical. And but this is more on the experiential. So that's a must. Get that. And I'm challenging you guys to do this, to get these books. I mean, how much does that cost? $10 for the Kindle version, or just get the paperback, whatever. Get these books that I talk about and start reading them. And spend less time on social media. Even if you only spent a half hour less time every day on social media and spent that half hour reading, you'll get through a book, it won't take you that long, and then you just keep going. And so you will get your education, but you have to have some reading time every day. So I'm going to take you into, does anybody want to call? I'm going to take you into the 4-quadrant thing. Let's see here what Sherry's saying. It was your reflecting back at you, your lower ego, inner shadow, upstaging your higher I am ego, calling for you to work with it, integrate it, hold it in balance consciously, objectively. Yeah, that's a poetic way of putting it. It's my witness consciousness. It's my watcher consciousness, my developed magician witness, self-aware witness consciousness. That's what they call it in Eastern meditation, Eastern spiritual practices, the witness, the one that watches your own thoughts, right? There's a part of me right now that's speaking, and then there's the part of me that's watching my speaking and listening to my own language and analyzing it. And when I, make a mistake or I say something that goes in the wrong direction, I correct myself. And so, but that watcher or witness gets sucked down. It gets overridden by emotional reactivity. And so when you get emotionally reactive about something, the witness shuts down. Tends to. And so over time of developing the witness and analyzing and doing this work and shrinking the shadow material, integrating the parts, integrating the energies, then the witness can stay active even when you're reactive. Now, what I was talking about earlier with projecting onto one of these guru guys is I wasn't that triggered. It wasn't that big of a deal. I don't walk around thinking about that guy or anything like that. It's not that big of a deal. So that was an easy one to do that with. But so yeah, I would say that my watcher, my witness, was just watching the conversation and realizing, oh wait, I am projecting. Okay, let's pull that apart. And then I just pulled that shadow content, which wasn't even that far deep in the shadow. It was already just kind of up halfway, pulled it up and worked it out. Carl Jung has been a fabulous teacher for you. He helped me get through and overcome your empath healing journey. and getting through the journey of the healed empath warrior humbly, gratefully. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, Carl Jung himself is difficult to read. It can take years to get familiar enough with his, with the background that you need to kind of understand it, because he's not writing for the layperson. He's writing for other, for the PhD level, right? And he was a protege of Freud, and he was, running or, at the top of the Freudian associations and all that kind of stuff. And so he has all that, psychological background, and he's studying the other guys, that are around at the time and everything. And then he's writing for this audience. He's writing for the other academics, for the top level thinkers in the field. And he's really kind of showing off in a way a lot, because he has such he's got so much depth and breadth of knowledge of not just psychology, but of history, of culture, not just Western culture, but Eastern and Aboriginal. I mean, he mainly knows about Western culture. The Romans, the Greeks, antiquity and all of this. And Nietzsche and the Greek philosophers and the alchemists and just all these, he's just studied it all so deeply, and he retains it all, and he's able to kind of put together a whole, and plus the Christianity, he knows Christianity inside and out at the deepest level. And so he's just so deep. And then he just speaks like you already have an education in these fields. And he's switching languages. He's using Latin and Greek and French, and it's all German, but it's translated to English, and then the translations retain the other languages. And he's using phrases, a lot of Latin. And he's dumping these Latin phrases on you and stuff. And it's just like, man, this is just way high level. But after a while, once you've either read him enough and kind of taken your time through it and studied and looked a lot of things up, or read other Jungians, which is what I recommend people do. Read other Jungians, read Robert Johnson, read Marie-Louise von Franz, read all these people, whoever it is, or even Tony Wolff, other people from around the time who weren't as writing as high level, or the Robert Moores or the Robert Johnsons or the Hillmans or whoever. Edward Whitmont, Edward Edinger, he's difficult, actually, Edinger is. But you read these people, and they will give you your Jungian education, and then you can go back into Jung. You can get the collected works. All this stuff's online now. All this stuff has been uploaded, to different libraries and stuff. You get the collected works, and you can start reading Jung's papers and books, and you'll be like, okay, even if it's difficult, even if you have to read slowly, you can get it, and you understand. And a lot of Jung's sentences are so packed. A single sentence will be very long, and it'll just be packed. And you just have to think about, what is he saying there? And then you just, oh, okay, I get it now. And then you move on from that. It's like take it bite by bite. So it's slow going reading Carl Jung. There are some things that, like Man and His Symbols, or what most people recommend for people starting out with Jung. Most Jungians recommend his autobiography, which is called Dreams, Memories, Reflections. And his kind of stenographer or assistant, Anelia Jaffa, put that together. And, so that one's easy to read. But Shelley, hi Shelley. Can having discernment sometimes be confused for projection? There are a lot of folks selling ascension these days. Yeah, well, the ascension thing is a new age thing that's been around for a long time, and it's kind of just another version of the Christian idea of going to heaven, or is ancient idea, nirvana, right? And so this is always in our collective unconscious and in our culture, this idea that you develop and that you ascend. And there's you can go into developmental psychology, or things like integral theory, or all kinds of Jungian psychology, whatever, and you can find maps, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, whatever. You can go and find maps that are more secular and more scientific. They still do the same thing. They say, hey, these are the levels of consciousness. And when especially you can study children, right? And you can see that children develop through different stages of consciousness. They ascend up the ladder or up the spiral, and they develop, and we can all see that. Plants grow up, everything grows up, and it becomes, closer to the light. A plant starts off as a little seed, and then it's a seedling, and then it grows up, and then it eventually flowers, right? And so this is a natural archetype, an archetype of growth in life, and it's in our spirituality, it's in our developmental models, it's in our religions, everything. And so this is an archetype. Ascension is an archetype. And so it's going to be with us. But when you concretize it, back to the word concretize, when you concretize these archetypes down into a specific cultural script, and you say, this is the way we ascend, and this is how we ascend, and this is what ascension means, and you start to put all these cultural connotations and identity, you start identifying the archetype. Now you have a religion, now you have a cult, now you have a practice, now you have a system, now you have a belief system. And that will hold that archetype, but it will also limit your ability to perceive the archetype. If you take somebody's ascension practice or ascension spirituality, ascension belief system, whatever it is, whether it's a Christian one or a New Age one or whatever it is, and you take that and you just go, oh, okay, this is how I ascend, well, then you've just, on one hand, you've given yourself a tool that you can use for some purpose, but you've also limited yourself. You've taken the whole archetype of ascension and you've concretized it down to a single little crystal. And so it's better to just take the archetype itself and just allow the archetype to grow, allow the archetype to show itself to you, and just meditate on the archetype of ascension, the archetype of development, the archetype of evolution. That's all it is. Ascension just means evolution. And when you're in the business of alchemy, when you're on the Jungian path or the alchemical path, however you want to put it, we're evolving ourselves consciously. Now, in the New Age spiritual kinds of belief systems that are out there, they usually neglect the shadow side of reality. They say, if you just concentrate on the light and you do these light practices, then you will get up to the light, right? But you know, like every plant, it's growing up towards the light, it's getting attacked by viruses and bugs and deer and everything else, and it has to have an immune system. It has to have an ability to, once it gets cut down, to regrow itself, right? It has to have an ability to handle death and destruction and darkness, because it's going to experience it most likely in its lifespan, right? And so the New Age, ascension belief systems generally leave that out. They leave out the shadow work, the shadow awareness. They leave out your immune function that you need to develop. So this is where in the Jungian system, in the alchemical system, we have a whole focus on how to work through the cycles of death, the cycles of depreciation, of the pitfalls and the dips, and so the underworld trips. And if you don't have that in your system, in your philosophy, in your understanding, then what are you going to do when nature throws that at you? What are you going to do when your life moves into a winter period? What are you going to do? You don't have any ability to withstand the winter, right? So you run around trying to avoid the cold weather in your life, so to speak, metaphorically. You run around trying to avoid the cold weather, and you just weaken yourself, and you just get weaker and more, and then meanwhile the shadow stuff grows, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The whole love and light thing, love and light is half the equation. It's sort of a master formula for healing, but it does. But if you just concentrate on that and you have no understanding of the dark side, of the shadow side, well, then you're going to have a rough time in life, and you're not really going to ascend. You're not really going to develop, because development requires moving through those darker stages, those little mini deaths, those dark nights of the soul, and learning from them and generating gold, wisdom, out of those rites of passage, you could call them. And then you integrate that gold into your consciousness, into your personality, into your psyche, into your soul. And now you develop, you grow wiser, you grow stronger and more flexible. You get stronger and more flexible. And you work, and you develop an immune system, a psychic immune system. And so this is the superior path for sure. And so I don't really. I know people are doing the ascension thing. They're always doing the ascension thing, but it's an escapism. Yeah, you get it. So, but there was another part of your question, Shelley. Having discernment sometimes might be confused for projection. Discernment is, how can discernment be confused for projection? Try to think about this. You have to explain this better to me. Discernment is pattern recognition, right? It's the ability to recognize a pattern that you've recognized in the past, or that you may not have consciously recognized in the past, but something that's come to you, and then it comes to you again, and you go, oh, okay, I've seen that before. I know what this means. The ability to translate, to obtain meaning out of input, out of data, out of perception, and get meaning out of it, and then that meaning gives you direction and how for how to behave, how to work your way through whatever the issue is. So that's discernment, that's awareness, that's wisdom. Projection is the simple process of perceiving in someone else a disowned aspect of yourself, a part of your own psyche, a part of your own personality, a part of your own being that your ego, your conscious mind, doesn't want to deal with because it's too ugly. It's just too ugly. Your parents wouldn't like it, your wife and your husband wouldn't like it, your community wouldn't like it, your church wouldn't like it, the law wouldn't like it, the judges wouldn't like it. Nobody would like it if you would start putting this out there. That's the original fear that creates the shadow. It's the equal opposite of the persona. So you have your identity, and this is how I'm supposed to be, and this is how I'm supposed to look, and this is how I'm supposed to act and feel. But I have a lower nature, and it doesn't have anything to do with that persona. It's more bestial. It's more beast-like. It's impulsive, it's reactive, it's childlike, it's animalistic, it's narcissistic, it's full of all kinds of primal animalistic drives like rage, aggression, control freakism, sexuality, all that. That's all in the psyche. That's all in all of us. But that stuff is totally antithetical to the way we see ourselves and the way we present ourselves to the world. And so that naturally gets repressed into the psyche. And so we're walking around repressing an aspect of our nature that's totally antisocial. And then not just antisocial, it's not just in addition to the fact that the community would not want, that the community forbids us from behaving in these lower ways, but it would bring great pain to your conscious mind, to your psyche, to your state, to have to metabolize that material, because some of that material is wrapped up in all kinds of patterns and memories, feelings that come from trauma and difficulty in life. And so to integrate that shadow material wouldn't just be ugly to the society, to the family, to the community. It would be ugly to you, to your own ego. It would hurt. It would be difficult. And so that's why people reject the shadow. That's why they repress, and that's why they reject shadow work. But you don't have to take all that on in one. You don't have to take it all on at once. You just take little bites of it, and you just make a practice of. It's like cleaning up the kitchen or mopping the floor or whatever. It's like, okay, it's a pain, it's a chore, but it's something that if you just do it continually, then it doesn't build up. It's a hygiene practice. Shadow work is just hygiene. It's psychic hygiene. That's all it is. It's psychic hygiene and sanitation, right? But it's new to humanity. It's new to humanity. We've only really recognized it very recently. It's been alluded to for a long, long time. We've had some kinds of practices in some cultures that have taken us closer to it, but it is only now in the last, say, 100 years that it is really we've really formed a real concrete understanding of the shadow and what it is and how we have to work with it and how to do this psychic hygiene. But so we repress. I'm giving you the kind of whole rundown on projection here. So we repress our lower nature, and then it can't go into our consciousness, can't go into the community, so we find targets for it. So we find a Donald Trump, or we find a Barack Obama, or we find a whoever, holistic healing doctor like I was talking about, and then they become our demons. They become the bad guys. They become the ones that will hold or carry aspects of our shadow. And so we actually get to kind of offload this material. It gets to come into consciousness. The shadow comes into consciousness, but it's held here. at arm's length. Instead of being like, oh my God, my own shadow stuff. Oh, yuck. This is me. Instead of having to deal with that, you just put it right there on your neighbor. You put it right there on them, and now you can still see the shadow stuff. It's still metabolizing in a way, but it's right here, and so you're safely protected. And then you get to, if it gets real bad, then you get to demonize them and get together with other people, and we can all demonize that person or that group. And then we can go into the world with aggression, and we can displace our physiological shadow into the world through war, through conflict, whatever it is. And then, and that's the process of projection, repression and projection. And discernment, awareness, discernment is actually what you need to be able to see that operation going on and to work it out. And so the alternative to it is what I was describing earlier about my conversation with Lisa, where we analyzed some of my shadow projection in real time, and then I had to sit with it and I had to assimilate some of that material in myself. And now I have that in my head, and I can keep on working with it. And hold on, this chair here. I keep working with it and working with it over time, and then over time I keep working through that material, and then I get some gold out of there, because maybe that person that I was projecting onto, maybe they have something, maybe it's not just a negative aspect of myself, because there's actually more in the shadow than just the negativity. There's the golden shadow, there's some genius down there. And maybe that person has a little bit of some genius that I also have, but I can't get it into my own consciousness. And it's buried. And so maybe by doing this analysis, maybe I can find some gold, some aspect of myself that's really, really good and genius and needs to go into the world. And then I can start accepting that about myself. And so not only do I feel more cleared because I integrated some of my darker shadow, but I feel more whole and in fact joyful and healed, because I contacted some gold. I contacted some of my soul gold, and that came up too. Just a little drop of it. And then, wow, feel a little better. Feel a little better about myself. You see? That's how we do it. And so I hope that was clear about the that discernment there. Sherry says, undiscerned map, yes, you're right. It's wisdom that comes through our higher conscious awareness, known esoterically as Sophia wisdom, sent by God, source consciousness, conscious through Sophia. Yeah, that's right. The Greeks, the Gnostics, would associate this archetype with an anthropomorphized goddess, Sophia, which is, I think in the Gnostic, is associated with, how is it in the Gnostic? I don't think she's the pleroma itself, the original zero, the source. Is it? I'm not sure. I can't remember. But yeah, if you some people feel comfortable using, I take mythic models, anthropomorphizations, and I take them and I look at them and I hold them and I go, okay, I don't believe in them, literally. I use them to show me, I use them as placeholders, I use them to hold an internal value, an internal feeling state, an internal, what the Gnostics call gnosis, right? Knowledge, wisdom. I think that's where that probably was where it goes back to, and she's probably the goddess of gnosis, is probably what it is. Okay, see you next time. Yeah, okay. See, I know these chats are a little bit late when you guys talk, Spiritual discernment, right. When you guys talk, I am Her Eminence. Cheers. Hi there. Cheers to you too. When you guys talk on there, I think it comes to me like 30 seconds later or something. So forgive the pause there. I don't see your writings for a little bit. But yeah, I looked at the Gnostic thing for a little while. I looked at it. I was like, just wanted to look at it and see what it is. What's the deal here? But I can't quite remember the whatever the main one, the Valentinian Gnostic system, and what different gods. I mean, I know the basic idea and stuff, and the creation of the demiurge, but I just I'm not able to really put too much into any of these mythological maps. I look at them and I go, okay, thanks for the imprint. All right, great. And I'm going, so, as an artist, I do that with my art. I'm kind of like that. Some people really study, okay, let's say you're a musician. Some musicians really study other musicians, and they learn the licks, the riffs, the beats, the melodies, the vocal style, whatever it is. They learn it, they copy it, they do covers of it, they imbibe that other musician or that other band's style. And then that becomes part of their own style. And they combine other artists' styles into a new synthesis, and that becomes their style. We're all doing that. But some artists do that a little bit more than others. And what I was always someone that would take an artist, take another musician or a band, and I would listen to it enough to where I could get a feeling for what they're doing, and then I put it away because I don't want to get too influenced by it. I am influenced by it. It is influencing me. I wouldn't really even be able to progress without influence. None of us can progress without influence. We need influence. We need to be influenced. But I would just allow myself to be influenced enough to get the idea, to grok, so to speak, what the formula is, and then okay, thanks, and I put it to the side and don't listen too much to it. And then I'll use what I learned to come up with my own stuff, come up with my own style. And so that's kind of the way I do it with alchemy, with psychology, with philosophy, is I'll look at these systems, at this creativity, and I'll get something out of it, and then I'll use that. I'll imbibe it, and then it'll just become part of my inner state, and then it'll just kind of float into the unconscious, and then I'll kind of just forget, but it'll still be a part of me. So, when you in a way, it's kind of cool. It's kind of a good thing to do in a way. So for example, when you guys listen to me speaking about Jungian psychology or alchemy or whatever, you'll notice that I know what this is. I'm living it. I'm doing it. And especially because I did it for 12 years with Melissa. And we were so in it. So I know what this is. I know it like I know certain styles of music. I know those styles of music. I know how to play them. I know how to produce them. I know it. So I know this way of being. But I could not teach. I could, but I wouldn't want to teach a college class, on Jungian psychology or any of these things, because that just doesn't interest me. I mean, I could force myself and go into it and just Of course I can do that. I've done that with certain subjects. But what I would rather do is I would just rather kind of pull it all in there, because alchemy is a scientific, mystical art of transformation. And so there's the science side, the college class curriculum analytic side of it. And then there's the mystic and the artist side of it. And yet they're all in there, they're combined. And so I kind of like get enough of the logical, scientific left brain type stuff and the memory of this is what this is and this is what this is and these are the definitions and I get enough of that to where I can navigate, but I'm not stuck on that. I'm like, okay, well, what's my version of it? And then I'm just letting it kind of come through me, and I'm coming up with my own life art, my own alchemical practice. That's what me and Melissa were doing. We're coming up with our own life art, and we're putting it into books, we're putting it into songs, we're putting it into stage performances, theater, lectures, whatever. So that you don't want to get, or I don't know, I can't say what anybody else should do, but I don't want to get too far off onto the right brain side to where now you're just inventing your own mythology that you're presenting as a system that has objective truth, like a lot of the New Age stuff is. It's sort of invented. It's based on it's a synthesis of spiritual truths and practices and maxims from different times and places. And then it's kind of elaborated on and turned into its own science fiction story, and then presented as though that is a clear, coherent system of inner development. And it's really closer to somebody's fantasy. And so it's got stuff in there that's good and everything, but you have to take it as fantasy material, like you would read a fantasy novel. And then you kind of have to pull it apart and pull out of it what you want to. I don't want to go that far. I want to stay grounded in science and grounded in objectivity. Although when you're dealing with the psyche, this is what Carl Jung was constantly saying. I'm a scientist. I'm dealing with objective science. But he was testing that, through dreams and through people's through repeated patterns that come through many people. But it's very soft. It's a softer science. It's science, but it's much softer and more amorphous and everything. And so it's just, I hope I'm making it clear. I kind of try to stay between those two things. After shadow work comes true authenticity. Yeah, Mad Sounds. Hi. Let's talk about that. After shadow work comes true authenticity. Well, I say that is true. That is true. But I wouldn't say after. I would say through shadow work comes true authenticity. Because there's never any after. You're always doing it. Just like you're always sweeping the floor. You're always cleaning the dishes. You're cleaning the toilet. Cleaning the bathroom, you're going through your storage and you're pulling out the old stuff out of the old storage shed and you're throwing away certain things and you're keeping other things. You're always maintaining and cleaning and attending to, just like you are with children, just like you are with your garden. You're always maintaining and attending. And so the shadow work goes on forever for the rest of your life. But it is true that when you first start getting into this, you're gonna spend a lot of time on that. You're gonna be processing a lot of junk at first. And so, and through that, because if you go back to Jung's original definition of the shadow being the equal opposite of the persona, you got the ego, the conscious mind. You got the persona, the outward-facing aspect of the conscious mind. You got the unconscious down at the bottom. And then you got complexes in there. And you got shadow material kind of just splattered in there. And the shadow material it gets a lot of energy down there when it can't make it into the persona. And so when you're the persona, your identity state, if you put too much of your ego consciousness into the outer field of the persona, you become what we call superficial or shallow, right? Because you're all up here. You're just right there on the edge. You're just an edge dweller. You're dwelling on the edge of the psyche, on the membrane of the psyche. And you're not getting any depth. You're not going down, right? You're not getting access to a lot more depth of what's in the psyche. And so when you start going into the psyche and you start pulling out some of the shadow material that could go into your persona and could go into your ego in general, and you start pulling this stuff out, you make your whole ego and persona deeper and more diverse. And you become less superficial, less shallow. You become deeper. You become more authentic. Because authentic means that you have access to more of your wholeness. Because the human being isn't just the persona. You aren't just your identity. You aren't just who you say you are and what's on your business card or on your degree or whatever you call yourself, or whatever clothes you wear that identify yourself. That's just the most superficial part of you. And so to be authentic is to have access to much deeper levels of the psyche or soul and have access to those and put those into your persona. And so when you are around other people and they're talking to you and they're being with you, they notice that you're not just at this one level. You can go all kinds of places and you can tolerate all kinds of paradox and all kinds of difficulty and conflict in relationship or in yourself, and you can think deeper thoughts and come to deeper conclusions, and you just generally develop a more authentic is the word, deeper, more whole state of consciousness, and it's more feeling oriented, and there's just more psychic material in your being, in your conscious mind, that gets shared with other people, and people notice it and you notice it, and yes, you become more authentic because you've loosened up and metabolized stuff that was repressed, that was in the shadow, that was disowned. I never used to use the word disowned that much in relating to shadow material, although a lot of authors always did. Jung didn't really use that term. He used the term repressed and suppressed, more repressed. I think the Freudians might have used suppressed. And I know from reading Erich Neumann that he would say that shadow material gets suppressed when it's just pushed down a little bit, and then it gets repressed when it gets pushed down more. But now in more current times, people use the term disowned. You disown aspects of yourself. You repress. And or Jung used to say being one-sided, right? Being one-sided, just having a I don't really like that term. He used it all the time. Not having access to the wholeness of an aspect of yourself and just having part of that aspect in your life, in your consciousness. And then the wholeness of it is repressed. But never ends. Yeah. Never ends, but gets better, gets easier. You get competent at it. And the more you can do it with other people, with your partner, with your friends, family is going to be hard to do it with. But with someone, if you have someone, there used to be more competent therapists around in, let's say, the 60s and 70s, 80s. Now, because of the whole collapse and crash and dilapidation of the education system and of universities and all of that, and all the pathology that's running wild through those, we know, and the influence of postmodernism and fourth wave feminism and all this stuff. It's kind of shadowy stuff. The people who are coming out of the psychologists, they're more often psychiatrists probably these days, so they're just drug pushers. But so the quality's going down, and definitely the deepest material, the good stuff that came out of the 20th century is it's kind of like with anything, with anything in culture, there's waves. And when you have an emergence of something brilliant, something from the collective unconscious, whether it's whatever it is, look through culture at all the different waves of something cultural, some kind of art or architecture or philosophy that comes out of the unconscious into the consciousness of a culture, and then you have a movement, and all that good stuff's coming out. Genres of music, right? It's the original days when that genre was coming out. It was jazz, in the 40s or whatever. It was heavy metal in the 80s and 90s or whatever it is. That's the good stuff. Right? And then it just gets watered down, and everybody's just copying each other, and it just turns to junk. And you have to wait for some other cultural wave to come out. Well, the psychology's like that. And so my point of that is that you used to be able to find a good therapist, right? And a good therapist might be more affordable. And now you're having a hard time finding a good therapist. Now I think therapy is getting more affordable now because anyone can basically be a therapist now. But the quality of it is just, I'm talking about mainstream therapy, but still same problem in the alternative world too. Because I was going to say that when you're doing this work, you should and could technically do this with a therapist. Do this with a counselor, with a therapist, with a mentor who's trained, who's coming from the same school, from the same philosophy that you're working with, but they're further down the road, and they can give you some perspective. That's like what I'm doing right here for you guys right now. This is kind of like, free therapy. I'm offering to give you specific therapy if you want to call into the show, if you want to put your specific issues into the comments. We'll go right into it. But I'm also just orienting you towards the whole way of life and perspective and everything. But so you can do this work with a therapist technically, and then that person can be the person that you can have all this authenticity, or that you can develop this authenticity, and you can go through all these stages of initial shadow work with that person. That can be your alchemical partner. If you can't find it out of a friend or out of an intimate partner, you can maybe find it out of a therapist if you can afford to do it, at least as often as you need to. And you don't always need, a lot of people in the 70s, 80s, they would go to therapy every week, sometimes twice a week. Actually, I remember seeing even earlier than that, people were going to therapy multiple times a week. Some people went to therapy. I've read Carl Jung talking about how he was having a patient 5 days a week for a year or two or something. So that's just that's pushing it. But maybe somebody needs that. They need that kind of hand holding for a while. Mad Sound says, thank you for the reminder that shadow work is ongoing. I see the levels or tiers in my own life. Yes, it's a spiral. So you're gonna spiral through. Try not to take the alchemical formula too seriously. The negrito, the albedo, the rubedo. or the Negrito, Albedo, Sinitritas, and Rubedo, or whatever version of it you're looking at. Yes, it kind of generally goes like that, like the seasons go. It generally goes that way. But just like the seasons, it just keeps coming back around. And some years you have a real heavy winter, and some years you have a really easy winter. And some years you have a really hot summer, or you have a really rainy, wet season, springtime, or whatever it is, and sometimes it's different. Sometimes you have droughts for 4 or 5 years. Sometimes you have great harvests for 4 or 5 years. And so it's just like life. It's just like the alchemical process. And so it generally kind of goes through those stages, but it just keeps on kind of looping back around, and whatever you couldn't metabolize last time, some of that is still available for the next time, or maybe it gets superseded by something else, but then it's going to come back again later. So it's much more organic. It's not just a linear kind of a thing like that, or formulaic. It is formulaic, but in a loose way. So you're always processing the shadow material, and once you just kind of get the tolerance for this and just accept it, this is part of life, because our society is so allergic to the shadow. We're so allergic. We're just, like Robert Moore said, we're in manic denial of our shadows. We will do anything to avoid them. We will start another war. We will blame this or that group. We will constantly find other groups to fight with and to blame. And we will deny, and we will repress, and try all kinds of techniques to stay in the light. And everything we can to, we'll use drugs or alcohol or distractions, social media, whatever it is, to try to keep the endorphins going, so we don't have to feel any depression. We don't have to feel any of the deeper, lower material. And our Christian heritage has kind of done this to us. It's built into us now. And I often say that the reason why the Christian or Judeo-Christian ethos is put the way it is, in this duality where the light, God, life, love, light, is up here, and then the shadow, Satan, Lucifer, the dragon, the snake, Lilith, whatever, is down here. And you want to stay up here, stay in the upper world, stay with God, stay with light, stay away from the devil, stay away from the serpent. And get behind me, Satan. Right? Get behind me. So we're like walking around, get off me, get off me. It's not the way you do it, though. That is a way, though. This is the funny thing. I said that's not the way you do it, but that is the way you can do something very powerful. You can expand your civilization that way. If you deny, project, repress your shadow, and then you can put it on somebody else, then you can use that repressed energy and that target. You've targeted somebody else, and then you've taken your repressed energy, your rage, your aggression, and then you can use that for war and colonization and expansion. And you can tolerate immense amounts of suffering because you have a righteous path, and you're expanding, and you're colonizing, and you're getting more resources, and you're growing. Growth, addiction to growth. And we just have been through 10,000 years of growth. And so we had religions and ethics, philosophies that served that trajectory, the growth trajectory. And I'm not going to say that nature made a mistake in that. Nature does not abhor death whatsoever or suffering. Not at all. We don't like to hear that, but she doesn't. And so I'm not going to say that the patriarchy or the colonization and the growth and all that was not serving some kind of biological, evolutionary, long-term purpose. I think it was. It's very hard to come to terms with that and say, you mean God and nature, or God or nature, however you want to put it, is actually participating. This divine intelligence is actually participating in all this death and destruction and chaos? Yes. Yes, it's true. But that realization can only be come to after you kind of pull apart the prior philosophy and understanding that you've been tucked into and it's been giving you comfort, and face the whole thing, like what you have to do at the personal level with facing your shadow. At the civilizational level, we have to face the civilizational shadow, the dark side of progress, the dark side of growth, the dark side of expansion. And so this shadow repression and projection has actually been a sort of mechanical way of facilitating, of using human energy, human libido energy, human grandiosity to grow, to expand. And now we're kind of at a point on the planet, in human culture and human civilization, where we've kind of gone to the limits now. Every place on the planet is now owned by somebody or inhabited by somebody, and we're arguing over, we're still, so you can just kind of keep going, and I'm going to take that property from you, and no, I'm going to take it back, and no, I'm going to take it, no, I'm going to take it. You just kind of do that for a while. Or you could say, we're going to go to the moon, we're going to go to Mars, we're going to have our civilization on Mars. You've noticed that some of these unconscious people, they just say, okay, that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go to Mars. We're going to go to the moon. We're going to take our immature, expansive civilization, and we're going to just take it out there because we need more space. But the more mature thing to do is just to stop in place and go, okay, we're done with expansion now. So now let's move into a more symbiotic homeostasis. Let's figure out how to have instead of a growth economy, a recycle economy. Let's figure out how to sit in place with our emotions, process our material in our relationships, in our psyches. And let's work with what we have. Let's get more on this recycling kind of a path, cleaning kind of. We have a lot of cleaning to do on planet Earth. There's a lot of inventions that could be created that will clean things up. So that's a whole other mentality, it's a whole other economy, and it requires a whole other ethics, a whole other mythology. And when you are taking the devil and splitting the devil off from God, when clearly the devil is part of God, and you're constantly running away from the devil and projecting the devil onto other people and doing this whole shadow game, then you can't make progress. You can just stay in the old mode. But when that mode is over, like it's ending now, you're gonna burn up, or you're gonna evolve or die. That's what it is right now. It's evolve or die. And so we need. That's where we come to something like this. Right? Let's see there. Can you see there? Depth Psychology and a New Ethic by Erich Neumann. Written in 1949, right after World War II, after that huge tragedy, shadow projection mass hypnosis. And he said, this is 1949, and Jung and the Jungians had an understanding of the shadow and everything I've been explaining tonight, how it all works. Everything I'm explaining tonight was known in 1949. And before that. And Neumann said, if we don't develop an ethic of processing our shadows and working with our lower nature and metabolizing it and stop projecting it and displacing it, that we're just going to kill ourselves because we're nuclear powers now. And we have managed not to in that whatever 70, 80 years, we've managed not to do that yet. It's still possible though, for sure. And but we're kind of on the edge of that. And he was saying we need another ethic, another way of looking at things. And part of that, even though it's very heretical to the Christian ethos, is that God and Satan are one. Right? It's all one system. There's only one being. There's only one ecosystem of psyche and mind. All is mind. It's all included in there. And so then you have to sort of figure out, well, what is the purpose of this, and what is the purpose of this duality consciousness, and you have to sort of come up with a new ethic. And what the Jungians were coming up with was, you recognize that the devil, that Satan is a metaphor, is an anthropomorphization, is a metaphor for our shadows, our lower nature, and that instead of projecting them and seeing demons and devils out there, we recognize they're part of ourselves, and then we metabolize them in place. And we develop practices and models and mindsets to be able to do that. That's what we do. That's called integration. And we instead of being in manic denial and projection all the time, we move into integration mode. Instead of expansion and growth and running away, we're sitting in place and we're integrating. And it's another way of being. It's another ethic. It requires another myth. It requires another mindset. We haven't gotten there yet, but people like those guys were talking about it. Joseph Campbell was talking about this kind of thing, slightly differently, but pretty much, and maybe I would say Joseph Campbell was just saying it more gently. That's all. He was just kind of being more gentle about it. But that's where we need to go. Thank you, Theo. Thanks for the compliments. Theo says, a psychedelic experience in my late teens was my first real initiation to spirituality. And I've been using cannabis, let's talk about this. Cannabis daily the past couple of years in minimal doses for healing. Yes, in minimal doses. I would recommend that you kind of go on and off of it, even if you're using, that's how I use it too, in minimal doses. And sometimes I'm in a mode where I need to use it more often, especially as an artist, you would use it a little more often if you're trying to summon unconscious material. Different people metabolize it differently, and when you start practicing with it, you might go through stages of paranoia and things like that. You got to kind of work through that. But once you can kind of get it integrated into your psyche, it can be a very effective, especially very clean cannabis can be a very effective psychospiritual healing tool or creative tool. But it can also become a crutch, and then your neurochemical ecosystem can become develop too much affinity for it, and then and you can kind of have crashes when you get off of it and stuff like that. So I would recommend people use it. If you have to use it regularly for a while, you can, but then get off of it. Spend a few months without it, and then bring it back in. Maybe use it like me and Melissa. We would use it once a week. Once a week was kind of our way of doing it. And then I went into, she never really did it more than once a week. And then for some periods, some years, we just gave it up totally. Didn't use it at all. But when we were being very creative, we would use it once a week, was pretty common. And then I would use it more often for music creation. Writing it didn't really work for, what it could work for is working through ideas and taking notes. But then when I actually am writing, I wouldn't be doing it. But yeah, it can be very, very effective and very useful. But I do think you have to kind of be not overuse it. But you're welcome, brother. So okay, now where are we, folks? We've gone a little bit late today, and most folks join me a little bit later than just 7 p.m. Central. It's possible that I could start the broadcast later, because if I'm going to be going till 9:30 my time anyway, I could start it at 8 my time and go to 10. It could be 8 to 10. That might work for you guys, because or maybe it's just 7:30 or something like that, because a lot of times what happens is I end up sort of starting my lecture or whatever you call it, and hardly anybody's here, and then you guys show up later. So I don't know. In the meantime, I think this was a pretty good broadcast tonight. So I would say when we're done tonight, either tonight or tomorrow or whenever you want to, go back and listen to the whole thing from the beginning, because we covered a lot of material, and there was some good stuff in there. I was going to ask someone to call in. I did put the call out for you guys to call in, but I was thinking someone was going to do that. But we're all good. Now, does anybody have anything to add or to ask before we sign out for the night? And also, if anybody knows anybody that would appreciate a broadcast like this, that wants to learn how to live an alchemical life. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't take you through the 4 quadrants thing. I was going to do that. I'm going to have to do it next week now. That's good. That's better. That's better, because I'm still been working on it. I've been working on the 4 quadrants thing for years. It was in the last book, but I'm making a document now that's like really chock full of shadow descriptions and shadow work practices and questions to ask yourself to pull up shadow material, like a very useful tool. It's still kind of high level. It's still kind of for people like Theo, for example, who are putting together their own thing. And some people are more inclined to just, study other people's systems and make their own thing, make their own system for themselves. Some people are more wanting to grab something that works for them and kind of just use it. And either way is fine, because I do both of that. I do both of those kind of things. Sometimes I pull things apart and make my own thing. Sometimes I just grab something as a chunk, use it. But yeah, so this 4 quadrant thing is going to be good, and then I'm going to do workshops based on this, because it's a very useful thing. And so that's in development, and I'll be sharing that with you guys and giving you little pieces of it as I develop it. So I'll do that next week. And if anybody knows anybody else that they think might want to tune into this show, I'm going to count on you guys to share the program. You could share this one here. This was a pretty good one. There's others. You know which ones they are. Share with somebody else. And let's get more people in here. It's nice having a small group, though, because I can actually talk to you guys, and it works. And this is not a big kind of mainstream type thing anyway. So I'm not talking about it getting, it's probably going to be quaint anyway. But it would be good to get more people in here and to spread the word. So, all right, I think I'm going to head out. And what are the websites? ShadowTechAlchemy.com, SolutioPodcast.com, MelissaMariMovie.com. Anybody can see the movie about Melissa if they want to. Just send me a message and I'll send you the link and I'll send you the password. And you can see the trailer at MelissaMariMovie.com. And that is the ShadowTechCoaching.com. That's my coaching website, so that's up there. And if anybody wants to come up with something during the week, if you come up with something during the week, just send me a message. I'm Colin E. Davis on Facebook. You can message me that way, and then we'll address whatever your question or comment is in the next show. So thank you guys for tuning in. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you all. I'm getting to know you all, and it's wonderful. And I appreciate every one of you and your questions and your comments are vital to this program. Vital to it. This is for you. This is not just to listen to myself talk. This is to help you guys. So the more participation, the better, and I appreciate every bit of it. So all right, have a great week, and I will see you next week. And this time I'll put the little YouTube premiere up in advance in time, which I was late on this time. So have a great week, and talk to you guys later.